The wind blew softly across the silent fields of Isera. The war had ended, but its marks stayed everywhere. Burned soil, broken ships, and walls covered in ash stretched as far as the eye could see. The skies that once held shining silver clouds were now filled with dust that turned the sunset into dull red. The sound of machines and weapons had finally gone quiet, replaced by the cries of birds returning to the ruins. Among the wreckage walked a man named Ryan. His uniform was torn, his boots covered in dried mud, and his hands carried the rough marks of labor. He was one of the few humans who had stayed behind after the peace agreement. Most soldiers had been taken home, but Ryan asked to remain. He wanted to help rebuild the place that had seen too much destruction. The people of Isera had suffered on both sides. To him, it did not matter who had started the war. What mattered was that children were hungry and families were broken. Each day he moved between the ruins, searching for survivors. His tools were simple: a scanner for life signs, a small shovel, and his strength. Many of the Aleri, the tall, graceful beings who had once fought against humans, still did not trust him. Yet they allowed him to help because he never asked for reward or thanks. He just worked quietly and rested only. When his body forced him to, the sun was lowering when he reached the southern part of the old colony. There, the ground was uneven and covered with pieces of metal. He heard a weak sound that made him stop. It was a voice, soft and afraid, coming from under a collapsed shelter. He rushed forward and began to pull away the twisted panels. Beneath the layers of metal, he found a small Ilari child. The child had bright silver eyes, wide with fear, and delicate blue skin that was bruised from the fall. Ryan spoke gently, keeping his voice calm. "You are safe now. I will help you." The child tried to speak, but only a faint whisper came out. Ryan checked the surroundings. The structure above them looked unstable. A metal beam hung loose and threatened to fall at any moment. He needed to act fast. He placed his scanner beside the child to track breathing and started lifting the heavy plates one by one. Every move hurt his muscles, but he did not stop. When the last piece was removed, he saw that the child's leg was trapped under a bent support bar. It was too heavy for one arm, so he leaned his whole body weight against it. The metal groaned. Dust rained down from above. He pushed again and managed to move it just enough to free the small leg. The child whimpered but tried to stay still. Suddenly, a strong tremor shook the ruins. The upper wall began to crack, and the beam that had been hanging loose started to fall. Ryan had no time to think. He threw himself over the child and used his back to shield the small body. The beam hit his armor and sent a wave of pain through him. He gritted his teeth and held on. Pieces of stone fell on his shoulders, cutting through the fabric. But he did not move until the shaking stopped. When silence returned, he took a slow breath and looked down. The child's eyes were wide with shock, but still alive. Ryan smiled weakly and said, "See? You are safe." Pushed the debris aside and sat back, feeling a sharp pain in his shoulder. His arm was numb, but he ignored it. He picked the child up carefully and carried them toward the open road where rescue teams might pass. The road stretched between two burned towers, and the wind carried a faint hum of engines in the distance. By the time the Ilari patrol arrived, Ryan was sitting on a broken piece of wall, holding the child wrapped in his jacket. The soldiers pointed their energy spears at him, unsure of what to do. He was still wearing the human army symbol, though it was torn and covered in dust. Ryan raised his hands slowly and said, "This one was trapped under the shelter. I found them and kept them safe." The Ilari captain, a tall woman with pale markings on her face, stepped forward. Her voice was cold but steady. "You are a human soldier. Why would you risk your life for one of ours?" Ryan looked at her, and then at the child who was now sleeping in his arms. "Because they are a child. That is enough reason." The captain studied him for a long moment. Then she signaled her guards to lower their weapons. One of them took the child from his arms and wrapped them in a silver blanket. The captain gave Ryan a small nod of respect, though her eyes showed confusion. "You are injured. We will bring you to the medical unit." Ryan shook his head. "Take care of the child first." "I can wait." Captain hesitated, then agreed. The group moved toward the transport ship that waited nearby. Ryan followed at a slow pace, his shoulder aching. As the engine started, he looked back at the ruins. The red light of the setting sun painted everything in shades of fire and gold. For the first time in many months, he felt something different in the air. It was not victory or defeat, it was a quiet sense of hope. That night, Ryan lay in a small medical tent near the Ilari base. The doctors treated his injuries and gave him a nutrient drink. Most of them avoided speaking to him, though one young medic smiled shyly and thanked him for saving the child. Ryan simply nodded and rested. Outside the tent, voices rose in argument. Some Ilari officers believed Ryan had done it for attention. Others thought he wanted to gain access to their command. But the captain who had found him defended his actions. He had no weapon and no plan. He acted before thinking. That kind of courage cannot be faked. When the discussion reached the higher council, they sent a report to the capital. The message traveled through the stars and reached the great city of Illyra, the home of Queen Meles. She read the report with calm eyes. The words described how a human soldier, once their enemy, had risked himself to save an Ilari child during an aftershock. The queen leaned back on her crystal throne. She was known for her wisdom and her search for peace beyond pride. To her, this story was more than an act of bravery. It was a sign that perhaps humans were not as cruel or selfish as her advisors believed. She asked her aides to find out more about this Ryan. While the queen read the reports, Ryan continued to help at the camp. His injuries were still healing, but he refused to stay idle. He helped move supplies, repaired shelters, and spoke kindly to both human and Ilari survivors. The child he had saved came to visit him once, carried by their mother. The mother bowed deeply and said, "You gave me my heart back. I have no words." Ryan smiled and said softly, "Then we are even. You gave me hope." That small exchange was seen by many in the camp. Word spread quickly through the channels of the Ilari news network. Images of the human soldier standing beside the Ilari child began to appear across the empire. People started talking. Some said it was propaganda, others believed it was a real act of humanity. But no one could deny that the image made them feel something unusual - respect. Days later, an official envoy arrived at the camp. The captain saluted Ryan and said, "The queen herself has requested your presence at the royal city. You are to travel with us." Ryan was surprised. He had expected nothing more than quiet work here. "The queen wants to see me? Why?" "She did not say," replied the captain. "But when the queen calls, it is wise to answer." Ryan thought for a moment, then nodded. He packed his small bag, leaving behind the tools he had used. The Ilari child ran up to him and held his hand for a brief moment. "Will you come back?" The child asked. "If I can," Ryan said, "I will." The ship that carried him rose above the ruins and into the calm sky. As the world of Asera shrank below, he looked through the window and whispered a promise to himself that he would never let war decide who deserved kindness in the royal city. Queen Meles prepared her court for his arrival. Her advisors warned her that humans were unpredictable, that showing interest in one could be seen as weakness. But she silenced them with a glance. "If a man can risk his life for our child," she said, "then perhaps he understands honor better than those who speak of it." The queen stood before the great mirror in her chamber. Her reflection looked proud, yet curious. She had met many generals and leaders, but never a soldier who had no desire for reward. The words in the report stayed in her mind. He said, "A child is a child." For the first time in many cycles, she felt that the long shadow of war might finally begin to lift. As Ryan's ship entered the glowing atmosphere of Illyra, he looked out at the crystal towers rising from the oceans. The city sparkled like a living jewel under the twin suns. He did not know what awaited him, their judgment, praise, or something else, but his heart was calm. Whatever came, he would face it the same way he faced the falling beam on Asera. The journey to the capital world of Illyra was long and quiet. The ship that carried Ryan traveled through silver clouds and glowing rings that surrounded the planet. Illyra was known for its beauty, where towers rose like glass mountains and the oceans shimmered with bright colors. To Ryan, it looked like a dream. He had seen many worlds destroyed by war, but never one that still held so much peace. Inside the ship, Ryan sat near a window and watched the light play across the surface of the sea. The Illyri guards kept their distance, but did not treat him harshly. One young soldier, named Lyra, offered him water and spoke kindly. She was curious, but cautious. "You are not afraid," she said. "Many humans tremble when they come to the Queen's city." Ryan smiled gently. "I have faced storms stronger than fear. I am only a guest here." Lyra tilted her head, studying him. "The Queen is not cruel, but she sees everything. She will ask you why you did what you did. Be honest. She values truth." "I can do that," Ryan replied. When the ship landed, the city lights reflected on the metal floors like flowing rivers. Crowds moved across wide walkways, their faces glowing under soft blue lamps. Illyria was alive with calm order. The air smelled clean and carried the sound of distant music. Ryan followed the guards through long corridors until they reached the royal palace. The palace of Queen Meili stood upon a hill made of white crystal. Its walls shimmered as if they held captured sunlight. At the entrance, giant doors opened silently, and the guards motioned for Ryan to enter. His steps echoed on the marble floor. Inside, every surface seemed alive. Carved with patterns that told stories of ancient peace and lost ages, the Queen sat upon a raised platform, surrounded by light curtains that moved with the wind. She was tall and graceful, her presence calm yet powerful. Her eyes were a deep shade of silver, filled with quiet strength. When Ryan entered, the hall fell silent. The guards bowed low. Ryan did not bow deeply. He simply placed his hand over his heart, the way humans greeted in respect. Queen Meili spoke softly. "You are the human soldier named Ryan." "Yes, Your Majesty," he said, his voice steady. "You saved an Illyri child on Asera?" she continued. "Tell me why." Ryan met her gaze without fear. "Because the child needed help. It did not matter who they were. I could not walk away." The Queen leaned forward slightly. "You were injured. You could have died. Yet you acted without thought of yourself. Were you not taught that we were your enemies?" "I was taught that," he said. "But I learned that war teaches fear, not truth. I saw a child, not an enemy. That was enough." The hall remained silent. The nobles who stood behind the Queen exchanged uneasy glances. Some frowned, others whispered to each other. The Queen raised her hand, and the whispers stopped. "You speak with calm words," she said. "But actions weigh more than words. Many in this room lost family because of humans. They find it difficult to believe one could act with kindness." Ryan nodded slowly. "I understand their pain. I have lost people too. Pain does not have a flag, Your Majesty. It belongs to all." The Queen studied him for a long time. Her eyes softened slightly. "Yet it carries more truth. And it carries more truth than many long speeches I have heard. Tell me, Ryan, what do you wish for now?" He paused before answering. "I wish to help rebuild what was broken. If I can use my hands or my strength to bring peace, I will." A murmur rose among the nobles again. Some called it foolish. Others said it was noble. One tall counselor stepped forward and bowed to the Queen. His name was Sauron, an old and respected voice of the court. "Your Majesty," said, "this human speaks well, but his kind cannot be trusted. He may seek favor to gain power. You should not be deceived." Ryan turned to face Sauron. "I do not seek power. I only seek peace. You may test me if you wish." Sauron frowned. "Words are easy, human." The Queen raised her hand again. "Enough. I have heard enough of suspicion. I will make my own judgment." She looked at Ryan once more. "You will remain in Illyria under my protection. You will not be treated as a prisoner, but as a guest. You will work with our rebuilding council and show whether your intentions are true." Ryan bowed his head slightly. "I accept, Your Majesty." The Queen stood from her throne. The light behind her grew brighter, casting a glow across the hall. "Let it be known," she said clearly, "that Ryan of Earth will stay under my care. No one will harm him or mock him. He risked his life for one of our children, and I will see his heart with my own eyes." Her words carried across the hall. The nobles lowered their heads, though not all agreed. Sauron's face was tight with disapproval. The guards stepped aside, signaling for Ryan to follow the queen's assistant. Outside the great hall, the air felt lighter. Ryan was taken to a quiet room overlooking the city. The balcony opened to a view of glowing rivers and gardens below. The queen's assistant, a kind woman named Mira, brought him food and fresh clothes. "You have impressed Her Majesty," Mira said. "Few are invited here as guests, especially humans." "I did not mean to impress anyone," Ryan said with a small smile. "I only did what was right." Myra smiled back. "That may be the reason you did." In the days that followed, Ryan was given a simple role in the rebuilding council. His job was to help design shelters for displaced families. He worked with Ilari engineers, who were surprised at his skill with human tools. He did not talk much, but his actions spoke for him. When a worker dropped a heavy beam, Ryan caught it before it hit the ground, saving several lives. When supplies ran short, he shared his own rations without hesitation. Slowly, people began to trust him. The queen received reports of his work every evening. She listened carefully, often smiling at the small stories of his quiet strength. Once she visited the rebuilding site in disguise to see him herself. Ryan did not recognize her among the workers. He was carrying boxes of crystals when she asked him a question. "Why do you work so hard, stranger?" she said in a calm voice. "Because rebuilding is better than fighting," he answered without looking up. "When we build together, we forget the reasons we once fought." She nodded and watched as he continued to lift another beam with the help of two Ilari. Later. That night, back in her chamber, she thought about his words and felt something rare hope. However, not everyone shared that feeling. Counselor Sauron gathered a few noble families who disliked the queen's decision. They believed that letting a human stay so close to the royal circle was dangerous. They met in secret rooms and whispered of ways to make the queen see reason. "He cannot stay," Sauron said firmly. "If she grows fond of him, our traditions will weaken. The people will question her judgment." One noble asked, "What if he truly means no harm?" Sauron shook his head. "Even if he means well, his presence will change the way others see us. We are proud, and pride must not bow to pity." Their whispers began to spread through the palace, though carefully hidden. Meanwhile, Ryan remained unaware of the growing tension. He spent his evenings walking through the palace gardens. He often looked up at the twin moons, thinking of home. He missed the forests of earth, the sound of rain on metal roofs, and the laughter of his comrades. Yet here, among those who had once been enemies, he found a strange peace. One evening, he was called again to the throne room. The queen stood near the balcony, her hands clasped behind her back. She looked out at the glowing city. When Ryan entered, she turned to him. "You have done well," she said. "The people speak of you with respect. Even my council cannot ignore your work." "I only did my duty," Ryan replied. "You say that often," the queen said with a faint smile. "Do you not wish for reward?" He shook his head. "Peace is reward enough." The queen studied him in silence for a moment. "You are different from the stories told about humans. I have seen warriors who crave power, but you carry none of that hunger. Tell me, Ryan, what do you truly believe peace means?" He thought before answering. "Peace is not the end of war. It is the beginning of understanding. When we stop seeing each other as enemies and start seeing each other as people, peace becomes real." The queen's eyes softened. Simple words, yet they hold the wisdom of many ages. At that moment, Sauron entered the hall with a group of nobles. He bowed deeply. "Your Majesty, forgive the intrusion, but the council wishes to discuss matters of state. This man's presence here causes concern among the people." Queen Melis turned to face them. "People will learn that mercy is not weakness. I will not cast out one who saved our child." Sauron hesitated. "Then let him be tested. Let him prove his loyalty before all." Ryan stepped forward calmly. "If a test will bring trust, I will accept." The queen looked at him with quiet pride. "Very well," she said. "There will be a test, but it will not be of strength or battle. It will be of heart. You will help lead a team of Alari workers to rebuild the northern settlement where distrust is greatest. If you can win their trust, you will have passed." Ryan bowed. "I understand." As the hall emptied, the queen remained standing, watching him leave. Something in her heart stirred. This human, with no rank and no claim, had shown more courage and honesty than many who called themselves noble. Outside, the wind carried the song of the city. Ryan walked through the glowing corridors, unaware that his next challenge would not only test his strength, but also decide how two worlds would see each other forever. The northern settlement of Illyria lay beyond the bright cities, where the land turned rough and the skies carried a hint of red dust. It was one of the hardest places to rebuild, for the people there had lost the most during the war. The air was filled with tension, and even the smallest rumor could grow into anger. When Ryan arrived with the team of Ilari workers, he felt the weight of many eyes on him. The people in the settlement whispered as he passed. Some stared openly, others turned away. To them, humans were the reason for their pain. It did not matter that the war was over. The scars in their hearts were still fresh. Ryan did not speak of peace that day. He only picked up tools and began to work beside them. The rebuilding project was large. Whole neighborhoods needed to be cleared of broken metal and glass. The council had assigned Ryan to help guide the effort because he had experience with construction and repair. The first few days were slow. The workers avoided speaking to him. They only took instructions from their own leaders. Ryan stayed patient. He carried heavy beams, repaired broken machines, and treated every worker with the same quiet respect. One evening, while fixing a power conduit, a young Ilari named Elon dropped a tool and reached near a live wire. Ryan pulled him back quickly before he got hurt. The action was simple, but it broke the wall of silence. Elon looked at him with wide eyes and said, "Thank you." Ryan smiled slightly. "You are welcome. Be careful next time." After that moment, the air around him began to change. A few workers started asking him small questions about tools and building methods. He answered with calm patience, never raising his voice. Slowly, trust began to form. Each morning, he rose before sunrise and worked until the last light faded. He shared his food with anyone who needed it and helped repair the workers' broken shelters after the day's labor. When storms came, he stood outside securing the tents so that no one's home would collapse. The people started to see that he was not just a soldier, but a man who believed in doing what was right. One evening, while the workers rested around the campfire, Elon asked him a question that caught everyone's attention. "Why did you come here, human? You could have gone back to your world." Ryan stared at the fire for a moment. "Because going home would be easy. Doing what is right is not always easy. I wanted to help heal what we broke." Another worker, older and bitter, spoke sharply. "You think your kindness will erase what your armies did?" Ryan met his gaze calmly. "No, I cannot erase what has been done. But I can try to make sure it never happens again." The older worker said nothing more, but his eyes softened a little. The next morning, he joined Ryan in lifting the heavy beams. As the weeks passed, the northern settlement began to shine again. New shelters stood in rows. Lights returned to the streets, and laughter slowly filled the air. Even the children, who once hid behind walls, began to run around freely. They often followed Ryan, curious about the human who worked harder than anyone else. He would smile and teach them how to balance small stones to make towers, saying that balance is the secret to strong walls. Back in the capital, Queen Maylis received regular reports from the northern settlement. Every evening, she would stand by her window, reading the updates. The messages spoke of progress, cooperation, and a surprising change in the hearts of the people. Her council members were forced to admit that the human had done what none of their officials could. He had earned trust through honesty and effort. Still, Councillor Soren was not pleased. He came before the queen one night and bowed deeply. "Your Majesty, I cannot ignore his progress, but we must still be cautious. The people are starting to look up to him. Some even call him the Guardian. It may weaken your authority." The queen turned her calm gaze upon him. "A ruler's strength is not measured by fear, but by the peace she can build. If this man helps my people find peace, then my rule is stronger, not weaker." Soren lowered his head but remained silent. He knew her decision was firm. A week later, The queen decided to visit the northern settlement herself. She wanted to see with her own eyes the place that had changed so much. Her royal ship landed quietly at the edge of the rebuilt town. The people gathered in surprise, bowing low as she walked through the streets. When Ryan saw her, he was taken aback but quickly saluted respectfully. "Your Majesty," said, "welcome to the settlement." She looked around, her eyes scanning the new buildings. "You have done well," she said softly. The reports were true. The people here seemed content. Ryan nodded. "They did it together. I only helped where I could." She turned to him. "You say that often, yet I see your hand in every stone that stands." He smiled faintly. "Maybe, but they built the trust. I only gave it a chance." The queen walked beside him as they moved through the streets. The children waved shyly, and she smiled at them. For the first time since the war, laughter followed her steps. She stopped near the community hall and looked at Ryan again. "Do you know what they call you?" He shook his head. "No, Your Majesty. They call you Guardian," she said. "You have given them something more than walls. You have given them hope." Ryan bowed his head humbly. "Hope is what keeps us alive." I only reminded them of it. Their quiet talk was interrupted by the arrival of Counselor Soren, who had followed the Queen's visit. He approached with a group of guards and bowed. "Your Majesty, forgive me for speaking, but your presence here among commoners and a human may cause unrest." Queen Melis turned to him calmly. "Unrest comes from pride, not humility. Today, I walk among those who build, not those who only speak." Soren pressed his lips together, but did not argue further. Later that evening, a small celebration was held in honor of the completed reconstruction. The people lit lanterns that floated into the sky like small stars. Music played softly as the workers gathered around the open square. The Queen joined them, something that had not happened in generations. Ryan stood beside her, feeling unsure of his place. But the Queen's gentle smile put him at ease. During the celebration, an old woman stepped forward with tears in her eyes. She bowed to Ryan and said, "You helped us when we could not help ourselves. You gave our children safety again. We thank you, Guardian." Ryan's voice was quiet but strong. "I only did what I hope others would do for me." The Queen watched the exchange, her heart filled with warmth. In that moment, she knew her decision to bring Ryan to Illyria had been right. When the celebration ended and the night grew still, the Queen asked Ryan to walk with her by the river that ran through the settlement. The water shimmered under the moonlight. The air carried the scent of new blossoms. "You have done more for my people than I expected," she said. "Yet I must ask, what do you see when you look at us, the Ailari?" Ryan took a moment before answering. "I see a people who want peace, just as we do. You may look different, live longer, or think in other ways, but your hearts feel the same pain and the same hope." The Queen nodded. "Many of my kind would not believe that a human could see so deeply." He smiled slightly. "Sometimes it takes seeing the world fall apart to understand what truly matters." The Queen looked at him, and for the first time she felt the walls of her heart lower. There was something honest about his words. Something that made her believe the future could be better than the past. Suddenly, a messenger ran up and bowed quickly. "Your Majesty, news from the capital. There are protests from a few noble families. They say the Queen has grown too close to a human." The Queen's calm expression did not change. "Let them speak," she said. "Truth does not fear words." After the messenger left, she turned back to Ryan. "Do not worry about their anger. The louder they speak, the more they reveal their fear. They do not hate you, Ryan. They fear what you represent." "What do I represent, Your Majesty?" he asked. "Change," she said softly. "And change always frightens those who live in pride." They stood quietly for a while, watching the river flow. The night around them was peaceful, but both knew the road ahead would not be easy. A few days later, the Queen returned to the capital. When she entered her grand hall, the nobles awaited her with serious faces. Counselor Soren spoke first. "Your Majesty, the Council demands to know why a human has been given such honor. The people grow uncertain." Queen Melis walked to her throne and faced them. Then let the council hear my decision clearly, she said in a strong voice. Ryan of Earth has shown more courage, compassion, and wisdom than many of us who claim to be noble. From this day forward, he will serve as an advisor to the rebuilding council under my direct protection. He is not your enemy. He is mine to command and mine to guard. Her words echoed through the hall. No one dared to speak against her. Even Sauron bowed his head, knowing he could not change her mind. The queen looked at them all and added, "The future will not be written by pride or hatred, but by those who understand mercy. If a human can teach us that, then perhaps we have more to learn than we thought." Beside the palace, the city lights shone brighter than before. The people began to tell the story of the human who had saved a child, rebuilt a city, and earned the queen's trust. And though many still doubted, a quiet change began to grow across the empire. Change that started with one act of kindness and a heart that refused to see enemies where there could be friends. Roland felt the cold wind biting through his armor as he ran across the shattered plains of Nerys. The alien city lay in ruins. Smoke rising from broken buildings and the cries of soldiers and civilians mixed into a chaotic symphony of fear. Mira ran close behind him, her small hands clutching his arm. Her bright eyes were wide with terror, but she trusted him completely. That trust was a weight on his shoulders. Heavier than any armor or weapon, the enemy forces had grown stronger than anyone had predicted. They moved with precision, as if they knew every path, every alley, and every strategy that humans or their allies could use. Roland could see their approach from the ridge above the city. A wave of armored soldiers and strange war machines glinting under the twin suns. The ground shook as their machines advanced, and dust rose around Ryland's boots. He looked at Mira and nodded. "Stay behind me," he said firmly. She obeyed, ducking low and keeping her small body close to the rocks. Roland could feel her fear, but he also felt a strange calmness. This was the moment he had been preparing for, though he had not known it would be so sudden. As the enemy forces drew nearer, Roland saw civilians hiding among the rubble, some crying, some frozen in shock. He could not leave them to die. He drew his plasma blade, the light humming softly as he swung it in preparation. Myra's hand brushed against his leg. "Roland," she whispered, "be careful." I will," he replied, his voice steady. "But we must protect them first." The first wave of enemy soldiers reached the outer edge of the city. Roland charged down the slope, moving with a speed that surprised even himself. The soldiers were taken off guard by a lone human striking with unmatched precision. Ryland's blade flashed, deflecting blasts of energy and cutting through mechanical barriers. His training and instincts combined into a fluid dance of defense and attack. Yet, even as he fought, Ryland's mind was on Mira. She was the reason he could not fail. She had survived this long because of his choices, his courage, and his determination. Every blow he blocked, every machine he disabled, he thought of her and the life she deserved. Then a new threat appeared. A massive war machine, taller than any building, moved toward them. Its cannons glowed red, ready to fire. Civilians screamed as the machine's shadow fell over them. Roland knew that if it fired, everyone nearby would be crushed. He did not hesitate. With a deep breath, he charged straight at the machine, drawing its fire upon himself. Energy beams struck his armor, throwing him backward, but he continued forward. Pain burned through his body, but he ignored it. Mira's eyes were fixed on him, her small body trembling, and he could not let her see him falter. The battle raged around him. Soldiers from both sides paused for a moment, stunned by the human's bravery. Roland climbed onto the machine's side, using cables and broken metal as handholds. With careful swings of his plasma blade, he disabled its weapons one after another. Sparks flew, and the machine groaned as it lost control. Finally, with one final strike, he severed the central power core. The machine collapsed in a heap of metal. Smoke rising from its damaged circuits, Roland fell to the ground, breathing heavily. His armor was scorched, his body aching, but Mira rushed to his side without hesitation. "You're hurt," she said, her voice filled with worry. "I'm fine," he said, trying to sound stronger than he felt. "We need to move. More are coming." From a distance, Queen Selena observed everything. Her eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in deep respect. This human had faced impossible odds, had risked his life for a child who was the enemy's own, and had stood firm when no one else could. Her heart, trained to remain calm and measured, felt a spark of something she had rarely experienced. The enemy regrouped and attacked again. Roland stood between Mira and the new wave. He took every blow that came toward her, pushing himself beyond the limits of human endurance. Soldiers fired energy blasts, but Ryland's agility and skill allowed him to deflect and evade. Each strike he took left marks on his body, burning and bruising him, but he kept moving. His determination never wavered. Mira watched in awe and fear. "Why are you doing this?" she asked between breaths. "Because it's the right thing," Roland replied, his voice firm despite the pain. "No one should be hurt if I can stop it." The enemy leader, seeing his forces falter against a single human, ordered a retreat. They had not expected such bravery, such resilience. Ryland's actions had shifted the battle. His courage inspired not just Mira, but the soldiers on both sides. Humans and aliens alike paused, seeing that even in war, honor and compassion could change everything. When the dust settled, Roland fell to his knees. His armor was shattered, his body battered, but Mira ran to him, wrapping her arms around his neck. "You saved me," she whispered. "I will always protect you," he said. Holding her tightly, Queen Selena approached quietly. Her presence was commanding, yet there was warmth in her eyes. She looked at Roland, at the scars on his body, at the way he had risked everything for someone not even his own. Her voice was soft but powerful. "You are unlike any human I have known. Your courage, your loyalty, your strength, they belong to more than just one world." Roland looked at her, exhausted but proud. He did not understand everything she meant, but he felt the weight of her gaze. It was recognition, respect, and something more, something that reached beyond the battlefield. "You are mine," the queen declared, her words carrying across the quiet plains. Not as a conqueror, but as a sovereign acknowledging true heroism. Roland did not reply immediately. He looked at Mira, who smiled up at him, and then back at the queen. In that moment, he understood that his fight had not been in vain. He had protected the innocent, inspired courage in others, and shown that humans could rise above fear and hatred. The city lay in silence around them, broken but alive. Civilians began to emerge, tending to the wounded and salvaging what they could. Soldiers from both sides hesitated, unsure how to respond to the human who had changed the tide of the battle. Ryland's actions had created a moment of peace in the chaos, a chance for understanding to take root. Ryland, though weary, stood tall. Mira held his hand, and together they faced the queen. In her eyes, he saw approval, respect, and a promise of something beyond survival. He had taken the blows, faced impossible odds, and emerged not just alive, but honored. The plains of Neres were scarred, but hope had returned, and in the center of it all stood a human who had dared to do what no one else would. The battlefield had quieted. Smoke rose from broken machines and shattered buildings, and the air smelled of scorched metal and dust. Yet in the midst of destruction, hope lingered. Civilians emerged from hiding, helping each other, while soldiers, human and alien, looked on in disbelief. A human warrior had faced impossible odds and stood unbroken. That human was Roland. Roland's body ached with every step. His armor was battered, scorched from energy blasts, and his muscles burned from hours of combat. Yet he stood steady, holding Mira's hand. She walked beside him, her small figure a reminder of why he had risked everything. She had survived, and in her eyes, he saw the impact of his courage. From above, Queen Selena descended onto the field. Her presence was commanding, yet calm. Soldiers and civilians alike gave way, creating a clear path. She approached Ryland slowly, her gaze focused on him. Even in a world of war and conflict, she saw a different kind of strength, one that came not from power or weapons, but from honor, courage, and selflessness. "Roland," she said, her voice carrying clearly across the battlefield, "you have done what no one else could. You risked your life to protect a child who was not your own. You faced our strongest forces alone. You have earned the respect of all who have witnessed your actions. R'hllon bowed his head slightly. I only did what I had to. Mira needed protection, and I could not let her be harmed. His voice was steady, but exhaustion and pain laced each word. Selena nodded. Your courage is undeniable. But it is more than courage. You have shown humanity at its best. You have reminded us that even in war, there can be honor, compassion, and bravery. You are extraordinary. Mira tugged at R'hllon's arm. Queen Selena says you are special, she said, smiling through her fear and relief. I already knew it. R'hllon smiled faintly, glancing at her. I just did what anyone should do, he said softly. Selena's eyes softened as she looked at him. Not anyone would stand where you did. Not anyone would face our armies alone. Not anyone would take every blow without hesitation to protect another. You are unique, R'hllon, and for that I declare, you are mine. The words carried across the battlefield, and everyone paused to hear them. It was not a claim of possession in a selfish sense. It was recognition. It was a promise of honor and respect. R'hllon felt the weight of her words, understanding their meaning. They acknowledged his bravery, his selflessness, and his humanity. Soldiers from both sides stepped forward, unsure how to respond, but their respect was evident. They had seen the impossible happen. A human had faced insurmountable odds and protected the innocent. His actions had inspired hope, not just fear or awe. R'hllon turned his gaze to Mira. She held his hand tightly, her small smile full of admiration. You really are a hero, she said. I only did what I could, R'hllon replied, but I am glad you are safe. Selena approached closer. Standing beside R'hllon and Mira, she looked at the battlefield. Then back at R'hllon. Your actions have not only saved a life, but you have also changed hearts. Humans and aliens have seen what true courage looks like. You have become a symbol of unity between our worlds. The people around them murmured in agreement. Soldiers lowered their weapons. Civilians cheered softly. Even those who had been enemies moments before felt the power of what R'hllon had accomplished. He had shown that bravery and humanity could transcend fear, hatred, and war. R'hllon's body trembled from the strain of the battle, but he stood tall. He had faced death, pain, and fear, yet he had not wavered. He had chosen to protect the innocent, to fight for what was right, and in doing so, he had earned respect from both humans and aliens alike. Selena placed a hand gently on his shoulder. From this day forward, you will be honored among us. Your name will be remembered not as a human alone, but as a hero of all worlds. You have taken blows for another, and that is the greatest strength anyone can show. R'hllon looked at her, then at Mira, and finally at the people around him. He felt pride, not in victory or recognition, but in knowing that he had made a difference. I never thought I could do this alone, he admitted. It was everyone who inspired me. Mira, you gave me purpose. The people I fought for gave me strength. Selena nodded, a rare smile on her face. Then let this day be a new beginning. A day when humans and aliens remember that courage, honor, and selflessness are stronger than weapons. You have given us hope, R'hllon. Mira jumped slightly, tugging his hand. Does that mean you are a hero? She asked eagerly. R'hllon looked down at her, smiling through his fatigue. If protecting others makes me a hero, then yes, I am. But the real heroes are all of you who survived, who helped, who cared for each other. The queen stepped back, raising her hands. Her voice carried with authority. Let all of Nares witness this moment. Let it be known that a human has shown strength, courage, and honor beyond measure. R'hllon is a symbol for all to follow. Civilians cheered, soldiers saluted, and even the recovering enemy soldiers watched silently. Understanding the meaning of the declaration, R'hllon's bravery had not only saved Mira, but had created a bridge of understanding between enemies. The battle was over. But the war within hearts had just begun to change. Humans and aliens now saw that courage and selflessness could inspire even the hardest hearts. R'hllon, exhausted but unbroken, stood with Mira beside him, the queen beside him as well. A human celebrated across worlds. As the sun set over Nares, casting a golden glow on the city, Roland felt a calm he had never known. Pain still lingered in his body, but he did not feel fear. He had faced death, protected the innocent, and earned honor. That was enough. Selena watched him, her expression softening. "You are mine," she repeated, not as a claim of possession, but as acknowledgement. "And I will ensure your deeds are remembered for generations. You have given life, hope, and honor where there was only chaos. You belong to all of us now, Relon." Relon nodded, understanding fully now the weight of her words. He had taken blows for another, risked his life countless times, and in doing so, he had changed the world. He was human, but he had proven that humanity could reach beyond its limits. Mira hugged him tightly. "I am safe because of you," she said, "and I will always protect you," Relon replied. He looked at the queen and nodded. Respect, honor, and recognition shone in her eyes. For the first time, he felt truly seen. The battlefield was quiet now, not with fear, but with promise. Roland had become more than a warrior. He was a hero, a protector, and a symbol of unity. Across Naris, his name would be remembered, his deeds celebrated, and his courage honored. And in that quiet moment, Roland allowed himself to feel relief and pride. He had faced impossible odds, risked everything, and emerged not only alive, but revered. He had taken the blows for the enemy's child. And now, the queen had declared with full respect and recognition that he belonged to all who valued courage, honor, and humanity. Relon looked around at the survivors, at Mira smiling, and at Selena standing tall beside him. He felt something rare and precious. Hope. Hope that even in the darkest times, one person's courage could change the world. He had become a living proof that humanity's best qualities, bravery, selflessness, and honor, could shine brighter than any weapon, stronger than any army, and leave a mark across the stars. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the plains of Naris. Roland, Mira, and Queen Selena stood together, a human celebrated across alien worlds, a hero whose deeds would be remembered for generations. And in that moment, the galaxy felt a little safer, a little brighter, and a lot more human.